Let's try that again. For my virtual folks, if you can hear me, can you please give me a thumbs up? Great, perfect. Looks like people can hear me. So with that, Jeff, I will let you take it away.
Okay, thank you. Let me, if you want to put up the header slide.
Oh, you're right. That would be a good idea, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. One second. Okay, I think we're good now.
Yeah. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I am Tandra Turner with the Urban Libraries Council. The Urban Libraries Council is an innovation and action tank of leading public libraries across North America. So we have a membership of approximately 165 public libraries in the United States and Canada. And so first, on behalf of ULC, which we refer to ourselves as ULC and its membership, I want to thank the Council of Large Public Housing Authority for this opportunity to elevate library public housing partnerships. And so, again, that's ULC. But the goal of this conversation today is to talk with Felton Thomas Jr. and Jeffrey about their partnership in the Cleveland area. And they have a very strategic partnership supported by the city. And we want to elevate their work and the work that they're doing to advance the economic, workforce development, educational, and health goals of their citizens and residents. And so in 2021, ULC administered a flash poll to its members. And when we got the results back, 10% of libraries said that they had a strategic partnership with their public housing authority. So they mentioned that, okay, great, we do activities, we have relationships, a local branch may have relationship with their public housing authority, but only 10% had a formal MOU. And so we reached out to Felton and we wanted to learn more about his partnership to be able to elevate that among our members and among your members as well. And so we know that when you don't have a strategic partnerships, that can exacerbate inequities. We also know that strategic partnerships help to provide financial support as well as sustainability for programs. So we just don't want the relationships. We want something that's set in stone. We want something that really advances the goals and the impact for our communities. So that takes us to Jeffrey and Felton. And before we get started, if you could probably tell us give us maybe your bio and tell us about the Cleveland area and the communities you serve with the libraries as well as with the Public Housing Authority.
I will give it to Jeff.
Yeah, I'll turn it over to Jeff because you are the star of the day, Jeff.
All right. Good morning, everyone. And I'm very much more subdued tone today than yesterday. My name is Jeffrey Patterson. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Cuyahoga Metropolitan Housing Authority in Cleveland. CMHA is the 7th largest housing authority in the nation. We have over 60 developments, 10,500 affordable housing units, and then another, another 15,600 housing choice vouchers across our county. So we serve about 55,000 people throughout Cuyahoga County and Cleveland. I'm born and raised in Cleveland, native Clevelander. I grew up there, went to the Cleveland school system, went on to college, went to Mount Union College, which is in Alliance, Ohio, and I later got my MBA from Baldwin-Wallace University. In terms of professional, I worked for the city of Cleveland for about 13 years, starting off as a intern in labor relations intern in Mayor Voinovich's office. And by the time I was done, I was able to work my way up to become the Director of Personnel and Human Resources for Mayor White and a member of his cabinet. After leaving the city, I came over to the Housing Authority, where I started off as the Director of Human Resources there and worked my way up from that to be the Deputy Executive Director, then to the Chief of Staff and Operations, and then finally to the position I'm in now, which is Chief Executive Officer. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy working with folks and trying to do the best we can to serve the residents that we get paid to serve. So that's a little about me, and I'll turn it over to Felton.
Thanks, Jeff. So I'm kind of what people refer to as the reluctant librarian. I wake up every day and go, I'm a librarian. How did that happen? Right now, I got into libraries in a very different way. I often tell people that libraries saved my life. I was 12 years old, born and raised in Las Vegas, in a very challenged area of Las Vegas. And every day, basically, me and my friends would go and just play sports in the only area that was safe, which was in front of the library. Everything else in our community had been burned out. And so I certainly soon realized that my friends were starting to get into gangs and get into trouble. And so every day as we passed the library, I would just say, I'm going to go in here. It was the best decision I've ever made. My best friends, the two best friends, one died in a drive-by and the other is in prison for life. And so I was there every day. The children's librarian saw me and said, you should work here. And I said, okay. And the next thing I know, I'm working in the library. I worked all the way through undergrad, and then I was getting ready to go off and be a sports psychologist. And they were like, Felton, you're like our kid. We're gonna, we'll pay for you to go to library school somewhere, and we'll give you a job when you go back. And I was like, that's great, but I really don't want to be a librarian. But they said, here's the list of colleges that you could go to. And the bottom of it was the University of Hawaii. I said, you'd pay for me to go to grad school at the University of Hawaii? And they said, well, it's a credit. I said, goodbye. Right. And I was off. Right. And, it was the best decision I ever made, because I met my wife there, came back and started running the library from which I had gone to when I was 13. And 3 years later, still trying to figure out my way, I got a letter from a young man who said, you may not realize what you've been for me, but you've been like a role model. And I want to come back to the community that just like you did and lead it. I'm in school right now to be a teacher. And, it just kind of put, a light bulb just kind of came up in my head, and realizing that I could be a role model for folks and that I can change lives in the library, which is really what I wanted to do. And so I just started dedicating myself to that, so much so that eventually the people in Cleveland started hearing about me, and they called me and said, we've got a director's job open. Would you like to apply? And I came down, and I didn't really know much about Cleveland except for that its sports teams struggled mightily, right? Which we still do, right? And so I got there, became the director of Cleveland. It is a tremendous library system in the sense that it has got a main library that's a full block that's dedicated to being the third largest public research library in the country. And then it has 27 public library branches around it. They're all dedicated to making every community in the city of Cleveland better, right? And so my job has just been trying to balance those two spaces. And really where I started to meet folks like Jeff was around the idea that the only way we were really going to balance that and make a difference in the city and do what we needed to do in the city was have those strategic partnerships. And so quickly, me and Jeff were fortunate. We were in Cleveland, they have a Leadership Cleveland kind of thing. And me and Jeff were partners in that. I had only been in there 6 weeks, and I met some of my best friends in the city at that point in time, Jeff being one of them. And we were like, we're going to take over the world. Well, maybe we'll just take over Cleveland. And so that's where we've been. And that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you for that. That's a good segue. And actually, the slides can be taken down the clicker doesn't work. But that's a good segue. Felton, before we get into the partnership aspect, why libraries? Why should any organization partner with libraries beyond books and reading?
I think one of the more frustrating things, libraries have one thing really going for them is people think they know everything about libraries and they like it, right? You ask people, do you like libraries? Everything will be like 90+%. Do you think libraries should be in your community? Absolutely. But people have a very old view of what library is. They still think about it when they came in as kids. They think about it as quiet spaces. They think about it and all of those. And most of our libraries have started to transition to what libraries have to be for their communities to be successful, right? So you come into our libraries, we're working with the food bank to make sure kids get lunches, after school every day. Coming into our libraries, right? We've got our banks of computers that people are doing job searches on, and we have folks who are helping people do job searches, right? We're doing legal aid. We're doing working with our hospitals to come in and do testing in our libraries, right? And so the library is the one entity, right, that people absolutely trust, right? As a profession, we're only second to nursing as being the most trusted entity. That means when you're in communities where you might find that people are struggling to deal with, with folks from a trusted standpoint, if you bring the library in, you're more than likely to get a positive view of what you're trying to do. And that is really, really important with people who are struggling to adopt what you're trying to give them.
So how did this partnership come to be beyond the leadership Cleveland?
Well, it's funny because Felton mentioned that we were a part of the Leadership Cleveland group, best class ever. I will say that's a thing, but it really is true about our group. When we got into it, we were all just kind of there, but for the first time in our class, which was the class of 2010, we actually had more nonprofit folks in it. Leadership Cleveland is usually a lot more business than government and nonprofits. But for whatever reason, in that class, there was just a significant number of nonprofits and a few government groups that were in there. And we got a lot of chance to talk. And we got a lot of chance to connect. And while I don't necessarily go with Felton's take over the world comment, I do say that we talked a lot about how can we partner? What can we do? How can we support each other? And probably one of the most memorable things that I had was the day that I came into my position as executive director. We were out at a reception for our Leadership Cleveland meeting. And I get a call from my board chairman saying, hey, X, Y, and Z happened. We're making you CEO tomorrow, let's go. And I was kind of just taken back. And I came back in and I just went and kind of sat by myself. And, Felton and somebody else, hey, what's going on? I said, hey, I just got a call. I'm going to be in charge tomorrow, starting tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. And one by one, about 10 to 12 of them all just kind of said, okay, here's what you want to do. First day, you want to lay this out. You make sure you want to do this. You want to do these things. It was a lot of encouragement. That made me feel good about being part of that group. But it extended because we all started doing that with each other. And as our organizations got stronger, our partnerships got stronger. Felton and I probably are on at least 4 or 5 different boards that we serve together on. And that's a very important thing when you look at communicating a message and making sure that we're together. If you go through Cleveland, you probably will find one of Felton's libraries within 1 mile to 2 miles of one of my developments, all across the city. So the infrastructure for the relationship has always been there. It's just a matter of, people really understanding what all the libraries have to offer. I was one of those folks that I went to the library as a kid, and I went to one that was on 107th and St. Clair. Spent a lot of time there. But my idea of the library, and I tell Felton this all the time, was I always thought about the Dewey Decimal System. This is how that was how we had to kind of look up for things. I say Dewey Decimal System to folks now, and they look around me like, "What are you talking about? What is that?" But then, some of the people who are kind of in my generation go, "Oh yeah, I remember that. The library, we did this. You had to match the numbers that way." But they have done a phenomenal job. The libraries have done a phenomenal job of just transitioning themselves into being even more relevant today than what they were when I was a kid, by being able to do so many different things. And that's where we see the connectivity. That's where the partnership could come, where libraries say, here's all that we have to offer. And we say, okay, here's how, here's the people that we have. And it's not a distance. It's not far. So that's a start, but I'll let, Felton add if he wants to.
No, I would absolutely agree. And partnerships can start very small with housing authorities and libraries. So early on, the first thing we started off when you were doing your lotteries for Section 8, right? Those folks needed to go, and it was the first year you guys started doing it by computer, and everybody had to do computer things. Well, obviously, people that they need to get access, and many of them didn't have access. And so we opened up the libraries earlier so that people could come in, and we designated specific computers so that only for folks who were looking to do that. And we were surprised at how many people were coming in. We were talking to Jeff earlier on about, we're gonna, we'll do this and that. And he goes, I don't think that's going to be enough. You're going to have to do a little bit more than that, because there are going to be a lot of folks. And we were like, people would be lined up outside the door in the morning.
Just for context, when we did the waiting list, we would establish a list of 10,000 folks, and we would have about 40,000 people apply. And we went from having a system where you had to physically come in to having a system where you had to do it online. Cleveland being one of the least digitally connected cities, there just weren't a lot of places where people could get the internet access. And Felton's team not only provided the access, but provided assistance to people who were doing it. And I think, since I'm here, especially with a lot of our housing authority partners, everybody doesn't embrace us. You say you're doing something with the housing authority, sometimes people get a little funny and don't necessarily want to do it. They look at it more of as a hindrance than an opportunity. So when we said that to Felton and his team, they said, okay, good. And I said, well, you're probably going to need a few more people. Felton said, okay, well, let me do this. Let me get an idea of what we're looking at. And something that could have been chaotic turned out to be something that went very, very well. And it was because you had a partner that really wanted to be a partner, but embraced it. And, from their standpoint too, it's getting folks into the library. So if you hadn't seen a library in a while, to go in there and see one today, especially one like Felton has throughout the community, it's really special.
Can you describe for the audience how your partnership is organized? So the strivers, the scholars. Could you say more to that?
Well, I can say more to that. In the city of Cleveland, the one thing that has kind of become more consistent is that the city has really kind of recognized there are 3 areas that we really need to work on. That being our scholars, anybody under 18 who is trying to get through high school. Strivers, folks who are struggling, who are in our housing authorities or who are struggling to find a better job, and then our seniors, right? So those are the 3 demographics that we all really work on together. And so throughout the community, at least there is one thing that is consistent, whether you're working through the United Way, whether you're working at the Housing Authority, where you work in the library, we're all trying to at least concentrate and focus on those 3 areas and groups, right? So for us, right, those are three areas, three groups that we are all really very focused on already. So we started looking at, well, like, what can we do for our children? You know, how can we partner together? Really, when it came to our strivers, it was very much around digital equity, right? And actually, that digital equity follows all three of those demographics, really, and trying to work through those. And then really specifically, and where the library has come in, is it's just not about access, it's more about literacy. So we've been really partnering with the Housing Authority around, once they can get people access, we are providing them with the digital literacy to help them actually use that, right? So that it has a benefit. It's just not enough to get people hooked up. They need to know how to use it, how to get an email address, how to do all of those things to make it beneficial to them.
And so for us, we were one of the first Connect Home sites that was selected some years ago. And we had this plan of really trying to explore ways to get folks connected. And that took a little bit of time. So as we are now, we have worked with a couple of nonprofits there, PCs for people, Digital C, and we also have been able to work with Spectrum. And we've been able to kind of connect 3,500, between 3,500 and 3,600 of our units across our properties. But as we were kind of marching in that direction, people still needed to be connected. And as the pandemic came, it was even more of a challenge. Felton and his team approached us and talked to us about providing hotspots for people. So a person could come in and check a hotspot out of the library the same way you could come in and check a book out, and be able to do that for a period of time while they were experiencing challenges in terms of COVID and not being able to connect for digital learning and things like that. That was priceless. That was priceless. And had we not had the relationship where we're talking, he's going down his track trying to do it his way. I'm sitting over here with the problem and not able to do it. But when you talk and you form those partnerships, it naturally becomes a way where we could serve the same people and the folks get taken care of. And that's the thing that's probably the most important out of it, is that a lot of folks were able to be connected at a time when connectivity was essential.
So what's the disconnect? Why aren't more public housing authorities partnering with libraries? Why aren't more libraries partnering with public housing authorities at the system level, at the leadership level?
I think sometimes it's not a thing of people don't want to. I think sometimes you just are in those forums where you get the opportunity to think about it. I mean, hidden plug coming for housing that's what this type of session is for, is to make you think about partners that you don't normally think about. I mean, when we're CLAFA and we're with our housing folks, we talk about things that are relative to the housing business, and we share those partnerships, we share those relationships, because everybody's all focused on housing. But when you get into a forum like this and you expand your focus from housing to housing with people and all those other things that come, then you get the opportunity to explore and say, I didn't know that. Another quick thought. During COVID, we were, trying to get PPE and all of that stuff together. I see a story on the news that Felton in his library had used one of those 3D printers to produce face shields for, I think it was the police department. I pick up the phone and say, hey, my friend, I got maintenance folks that are going into units. I got police officers here. I got security folks here. At this point in a pandemic, it was hard to get things. Things were coming, but it was hard to get things. I asked Felton, is there something that they could do? He expedited it. Next thing you know, we had a whole group of these masks that were now available for our employees. And that made our employees feel special because we were able to get them something that they needed quickly. And we went through a non-conventional source. I don't think that anybody, when you're thinking about getting that type of equipment, is just naturally going to say, let me call the library. I wonder, do they have that stuff? No, you just wouldn't think about it. But then when I took a tour of the library and I walked through and I saw not only how they could use it for shields, but how they could use it for so many other different things, that's when you realize the valuable resource that's there. And you compare that with the things that you do, and you can say, wow, they're just partnerships at all levels, from seniors to adults to kids. And I think we just naturally go to the kids part first, but there's just so many advantages there. So out of anything today, and you notice that we didn't have a million slides, and we aren't doing this. This should be a conversation. All we're asking for folks to do as a part of this is go to your local library. If you don't have a relationship with them, set up one meeting and then let it have the opportunity to grow. I guarantee you, there is something that you could do with the library that you don't know it exists. And there may be things that are already being done that are being done at the staffing level that haven't been elevated, that probably need to be elevated so you can make those partnerships even greater.
And let me say that some to that, because that's a very important point. As I was looking through the list of the housing authorities that were here, I was like, oh, I know that director, and that I know that director, I know that director. And some of you have some of the most innovative library directors in the country who are in your cities, right? And they're doing phenomenal things. We're talking about Portland. Those may not know, Portland actually was one of the first libraries to have social workers actually come into their library. And now people want to go to unfortunately now they have more people coming into them because they don't want to go to the social services. They want to go to the library to get their social services because the library it does it so well, right? So there's these innovative things that you can find with your librarians, and you should do this. I learned a lot yesterday when I was here in the different programs I was attending. And I think what I learned taught me that I really needed to get out of just being the one that attends the library conferences. And I would say the same to the housing authority folks, that they need to go to other type of conferences. What I would say ULC should look at would be to challenge the funders, the philanthropists, to provide funding for folks to be able to go and attend things. We get so much money to be able to attend, and so we know we're going to try to go to our own personal conferences. But if we can get an opportunity to go to a library conference and start to see what's happening with libraries across the country, I think it could be very beneficial. Or any other, there are probably a lot of other professions that we should be attending, and we should try to see if there's funding so that people can attend and put the word out about what libraries do.
And so how have you leveraged this partnership to develop and build other partnerships that serve your community?
We know when we look at like we applied for a choice neighborhood grant. The library was part of that. When we go and approach the local nonprofit organizations in our town about one of the partners that we always list is the library. Why? For the reasons that Felton said earlier. They are a trusted partner, and people know what they do and know how they do it. And it strengthens our ability to be able to get resources and things like that, because people look at housing authorities sometimes as, and housing authorities in the past have sometimes looked at ourselves as, okay, we have to do everything ourselves. We have to do this. We have to do that. And nobody's going to care about our folks but us. And in a lot of cases, that is true. But there are some opportunities where some folks are caring for our folks and we just may not know it. And when Felton tells the story about him going to a library and that being a safe haven for him, I've heard that story a million times for other kids that are in some of my properties. Probably the most active library that they have is one of the smallest libraries that they have, and it's in our central community. And that library is packed every day. Every day that library is packed. And it's to the point now where they're looking to try to redevelop that library. But being there and having that presence in a community is there. And when we talk about how we want to redevelop that site, and then Felton says, oh, we want to redevelop the library, and it's in the same area. So now all of a sudden, people are looking and say, oh, connectivity. We've got a chance to do some things to impact. So you add the local community college into that equation. You add a group that's building a scholar housing development in that area. You look at a Care Alliance which built a health center in that community. You look at what's going on at Cleveland State and their new development and their new housing. And then all of a sudden, an area that was once blighted and didn't have any development is now all of a sudden having all of these things that are going on that are going to benefit a lot of the people that are in that community. So when I go back to HUD to say, okay, now we want to do this part of this area, it's a much different picture than it was 10 years ago when all these things were, just thoughts. And that's where I think we have to do. We at CMHA, we have something that's called our 2045 initiative. And that's our initiative to go out and recapitalize all of our properties. So we're doing something to all of our properties across the city. Felton is doing the same thing with his libraries. So they are having a capital program to fix up a number of libraries across the city. The synergy in that starts with what I said earlier, that most of his libraries are within 2 miles of my property. So if I'm making economic investment in my properties, and again, he's making economic investment in his property, that now makes it more appealing for the city and the county to invest in those areas in terms of infrastructure dollars and other things to enhance the area. So that's the synergy. And I think that's some of the connectivity.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about what I used when I talk to my staff. I talk to them about parallel partnerships. We all try to have partnerships. Many of the times they're not even partnerships, right? They're, especially when you're working with a partner that has a little bit more power or whatever. And so they want more from you, or you end up taking more from them. So I talked to my staff about parallel partnerships. And the first thing we start to talk about is our values in place, right? Do we have the same values as this organization as we started to look in partner? And then I talked to them, the second thing that they need to do is focus on what's their mission. Is their mission one that we can agree to? And if we agree to it, then we're going to try to help them accomplish their mission, right? And the third piece of it is we have to look out for them. And if we look out for them, they're going to look out for us, right? And I'll give you an example where it was just one of the most surprising things that happened to us. We have a parallel partnership with CMHA. We also have a parallel partnership with the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland, right? They come in on Saturdays and they provide legal aid for our community members, and it is just a tremendous thing for our community. And so recently, the NFL draft was in Cleveland, and the NFL came to town, and they gave Legal Aid Society $75,000 to do something or whatever. So when they were asking the legal aid, you know, we have another a set of money. We have 75,000 we can give you for this. And they said, no, we think you should give that to the Cleveland Public Library because they're our great partner. We're like, what? You guys let them put $75,000. You told them to give it to us. And they're saying, we're looking out for you guys because people don't look out for you guys enough. Right. But that's what parallel partners do. They're always looking out for the other one that does that work because they believed in what we did and they knew we had always sacrificed to them.
And there's always a room. There's always a room, you know, that things are going on and decisions are made and things like that. You know, having Felton in some of those rooms sometimes when I'm not, or me being in some of those rooms and he's not, our interests are both protected, but also I'm not afraid to say, well, have you reached out and talked to Director Thomas? You know, he's got a program that's doing X, Y, and Z, and people go, oh, I didn't know that. And the same thing with Felton, he'll do the same thing with us. I mean, housing authorities as institutions are some of the most misunderstood groups around. A lot of people really don't know everything that we do. And it's not all their fault. I mean, they just think that, okay, all you guys do is either give somebody a voucher or here's their housing and that's it. And you don't think about, wow, if I'm a service provider or I'm somebody that's trying to do something, these folks have communications with everybody that I need to know. In fact, most of the people that are in a lot of these units and in a lot of these areas are people who are eligible for the services that I provide. So they will not necessarily just naturally come to that conclusion. Felton, who knows a lot more about what we do and what we're working on, he can start and plant the seed, which can grow a lot of the partnerships and relationships that we need to be successful. Housing authorities can't be islands. We can't be islands, but we can't be ignored either. And sometimes it's not our voice that people want to hear. But when others speak on our behalf, sometimes that works and that gets us to where we need to go.
So earlier you mentioned that the partnership is framed around the strivers, the scholars, the strivers, and the seniors based on the city's priorities. What has been, one, the response from the city, and two, the impact on those three groups?
I think the city has appreciated all that we have done. They certainly are supportive of us and what we're trying to do. And Jeff didn't mention it because he never agrees to put anything on the record about what we try to do at that library. I've been trying to get him to do a campus and put us on one of his campuses. He won't put it on the record on tape. So maybe one day I'll get him. But right, I think what the city has recognized is that this partnership works, right? And that we have an opportunity to really change people's lives in a way that it's such a struggle for the city, right? They're doing everything they possibly can, and it just seems as if things aren't working. But the key has been, the struggle has been, they're not leveraging enough partners, right? And so they've understood that, and they're coming to the ones that are working and saying, now you guys have to take an additional role in being a part in going out and leveraging more folks. And I'll give you an example on the library side, and Jeff can talk about it on the other side. No one would ever expect that the library would be leading the efforts around digital equity in the city of Cleveland. But a digital equity coalition was put together of 80 institutions in the hopes of trying to find ways to bring all of those folks who work on all of these different groups together on digital equity in the city. So IT folks from every possible organization as possible. The leaders of that, which was the Cleveland Foundation who provided the money, came to myself and the director of the Cuyahoga County Public Library System, the county around us, and said, we want you guys to lead it because ultimately everything is coming down to the libraries, right? And ultimately we need you to lead and leverage all of these folks together, right? So I think in this case, they have understood that the libraries are one of those groups that actually get things done. And they have then now put us in charge of making this work, which is a really, really big challenge.
And I think for us, I agree with Felton. I think the partnerships have, really kind of begun to be stronger, and there are more opportunities. We recently had our mayor, who had been in office for the past 16 years. He did not seek re-election, and we had a new mayor come into office, Mayor Bibb. And Mayor Bibb is a guy who has a lot of energy, a lot of ideas, and a lot of focus. And one of the things that he came into was the COVID situation. And he was forming a task force and, putting it together and things like that. And, people were giving him recommendations. And then someone looked at the list and they said, you don't have CMHA on there. And he said, oh, okay, tell me why. And they started saying, okay, well, CMHA has this, they have these sites, they have these things going on, they serve these people. They need to be a part of that. And he said, oh, great, yeah, let's bring them in. And it went from just being a part of the task force to actually taking a leadership role in the engagement portion of the task force. And what that has kind of spilled over into us was developing some partnerships where we would take the rental assistance programs that we have been able to secure dollars through other partners from with vaccine clinics. So at the same time that you're going through and you're trying to get rental assistance, you also could have the opportunity to get any vaccine, and it's a walk-up. So we have people there from the city's health department that are talking and answering people's questions and things like that as they're there. And then if they decide that they want to get it, they don't have to wait another 5 days to have everyone talk them out of it. They could go right down there right at that point in time and get that shot if that's what they want to do, or they could get information to have them be able to understand what they need to do. That's phenomenal, but that doesn't happen if everyone's not thinking outside of the box about how we can serve people in different ways when we have them all together. Not just you coming to see me for this one purpose and that's it. There's multiple opportunities for that. And we all know that, the generation that's coming in now, they like to move. I don't want to just do one thing. If I could do 6 things while I'm here, I want to do them. So you have to approach things a lot differently. And that's where I think the strength in those partnerships lie.
So this partnership works because you have a common interest, common goals. It's a parallel partnership, as you mentioned. Any other factors why this partnership is working so well?
I would say the people. I mean, Felton and I are fortunate, we get along. Some days. Yeah, some days. Other days we don't. But we get along. But the people who work for us, I think that's where it is. We could sit up and say, hey, do this, do that. And then just like in any other, institutions, you can have people that just don't want to implement or can't get beyond the turf or don't want to put the energy into making it happen. But it's a natural. I mean, we only had to, introduce our folks, once, and next thing you know, they kind of took it and started doing, their own things, coming to us and saying, hey, I get to, such and such library, we're talking about doing X, Y, and Z. Is that something, great. And because they're closer to it, they get to the collaborations and they get to the potential partnerships quicker than we do, because they're the ones that are actually on the ground that's doing it every day.
No, I was just going to say, I absolutely agree. What recognizing though that as friends, we are can have that conversation when something becomes a challenge, makes it easier for us to be able to work through some of those necessary issues that come up on anything. And I think our staff understands that it is ultimately this is going to get worked out, right? You know, we're not going to be in some public battle between these. So whatever public battle they're having internally, they need to figure it out, or we're going to make them figure it out, and it works. And so these things have worked out all along down the way.
And then what are the roles, I guess, the liaisons within the Cuyahoga Metropolitan Housing Authority and Cleveland Public Library that work together for this partnership?
For us, it's our resident services department who works with our Progressive Action Council and our local advisory council, which are the resident components. So they will talk with the folks at the library, and then talk with the resident leadership to make make sure that the partnerships and the things that we are talking about are things that are relevant and things that they can support. And then oftentimes there are suggestions that are made that would make it work even better. Like maybe this site might be a better place to start than this site, or we know that this person over here actually used to work with the school system, and so they really would like the opportunity to embrace this program. So it's good communication, you know, I think on both sides.
Yeah, on our side, it's our chief of engagement, education, and equity.
And so do you have any advice for the leaders in this audience who are looking to initiate or advance partnerships with public library systems, and how to navigate that relationship or how to start that conversation?
Well, first, I wanted to ask everybody, if you wouldn't mind raising your hand, if you know who your library director is. Right. And so of the group that raised their hands who knew who their library director was, how many would consider their library director someone who they partnered with or friends? All right. That's good. Right. And so when we get to question and answer, I want to hear more from them about the type of partnerships they have, or relationships they have, and what they've taken away from that. Because that's the number one thing that I think is going to be beneficial. Have you created a relationship with them? How can they be beneficial to you? I think the benefits of knowing the library director is, as Jeff has said, there are so many things that we are doing in libraries now that if there is an issue or problem you have, we may be doing face shields. You'll never know, right? Unless you have a personal relationship with someone and you need face shields, right? And so generally, if there is some emergency that comes up, Jeff can call me with just without a thought around, this is crazy, but are you doing this, right? And if we're doing it, like, he knows we're going to take care of it.
And I would say too, anytime,
Excuse me, Jeff, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I'm getting a note. Could you possibly hold your mic a little bit closer to your face for the virtual folks? Sorry about that.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm sorry. I was trying not to be loud like I was yesterday. So for me, I think, anytime I get the opportunity to sit up here and to talk about things that we've done, I realize that we're not the only institution that's done these things. So I realize that there are a lot of you that are in the audience that have similar relationships and things like that within your communities. So to you, our message is, join us in trying to advocate to those who don't have those relationships. For us, we could all kind of look at what you're doing or what we're doing, and if it's not something that either one of us, we could take those ideas and take them to our community because we already have the relationships established. But what's key to this is to get other folks the ability to establish those relationships and to be able to make sure that we're able to do that. I mean, if you look at it, you know, Felton used the term trusted partner, and that's good. But also, libraries have access to funding that we just don't have. And there are two things that you have to have when you're asking for funding. You have to be able to demonstrate a need, and you have to be able to show that the need that you're fulfilling is going to be impactful to a certain group of people. So for housing authorities, and this is true of our partnerships with libraries and others, anything that you could possibly apply for will probably be impactful to some level of constituency that we serve. So why, rather than running out and trying to find people that you say, oh, we could go here, we could go there, talk to your housing authority. You trying to get a program for kids? We got them. You trying to figure out how you could serve seniors? We got them. You trying to figure out how you can, you know, come up with programs that's going to help adults, you know, be able to take educational programs or to get jobs and things like that? We got them too. And not only do we have them in general, we have them in every area that you are trying to do programming. So making that connection. And again, like I said, this is not something that is just unique to Cleveland. This is something that I am sure a lot of you are doing, but there's some that have not had that opportunity. And that's the point of what we're trying to make sure we communicate today.
And let me just say that, and you know, before COVID, all of our work was not like folks coming into the library. It was us going into Jeff's spaces, right? And we didn't talk about that in the sense that most library systems, almost every library system, has an outreach group who go out into the community to do the work. All right. So it's much easier for us to go to you where everyone is than to try to get those folks into our libraries. And we're very comfortable in doing that work. And hopefully one day we'll be able to be very comfortable in doing it again.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to open it up to the audience here in person first and then virtually, if there are any questions.
Or discussions about like your partnerships with libraries already.
I have a big mouth, so I can talk loud. I'm Ivory Matthews, and I'm with Home Forward, brand new with Home Forward, from early March. But I'm going to talk a little bit about our partnerships with previous housing authority that I oversaw in South Carolina, the Columbia Housing Authority. At the Columbia Housing Authority, there was very little that we did without leaning on our partnership with the Richland County Library. We had a phenomenal library director there and staff. We were able to partner with the library right before I left to receive grant resources to offer an expansion of Wi-Fi services to our residents in the community. We also carved out a piece of one of our developments. We carved out some land and provided to the library. And we had a building that we were able to retrofit and provide to the library at a very nominal cost with funds that were donated to the library from our county. So, Mr. Patterson, you could certainly do that for your good friend here.
Yes, indeed. It is now officially on record.
Yes, officially on record. And just so many services.
You know, anytime we open our waiting list, same thing, we depend on the library, they're a tremendous resource in helping us reach our residents who needed that resource. And we also, anytime we did a huge relocation, when we had to go into a development to do, you know, comprehensive renovation or just a complete tear down and build back up, the library were our strong partners. And so they were basically a part of our relocation team and replacement team. And so the staff there were tremendous in helping us communicate that message. And, you know, and the reputation with the community was very strong. And so it added more strength to our message as well.
Mhm. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, that's a very good point, because libraries often, when they're very successful, have very good reputations in the community, which helps you a lot with funding and different partnerships.
Good morning. I'm
Good
Vivian
morning.
Brady Phillips from Jersey City, New Jersey. I actually am a trustee of our public library system. And like Ms. Matthews, we have a very strong partnership. We're actually doing a redevelopment and building a public library as part of that redevelopment. So, you know, for us, the library has been essential for all of our efforts. During pandemic, they reserved and helped us distribute hotspots. They've been a key partner in our digital equity work, providing ongoing training and support. We work with them whenever we're doing outreach to the community on workforce development. So we strongly believe in it. And in this case, we're going to be when we build the library, we're going to embed our resident services office within the new library.
That is outstanding.
Yeah, I like that.
And, you know, and I think too, you know, we have representatives here from the Urban Library Council. I think that, as I mentioned, I know that there are a lot of folks that are out here that are doing this stuff. We need to figure out a way to kind of get that information all together, and to be HUD is at a stage right now where I think they are really open to collaborations and partnerships. And I think that, you know, us being able to go and approach them with our library partners really is a good way for us to be able to secure additional resources. But we need to take these stories that we have and fold them into a book. Everybody has their own chapter, but we need to be able to take them and turn it into our own novel. Not bad for a non-librarian.
All right, I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one.
Kirsten, did we have any questions in the chat? We have about time for one more question.
Yeah, I think we actually have until 11, so I think we have a little bit more time here. But I did have a question in the chat from Priscilla. Was the carved space for the library charged to the library, perhaps for a nominal fee? I think somebody was asking about the cost.
I'm trying to think which
Could you say that again? Which space?
Was the carved space for the library? That might be a typo.
Well, she might be talking to Miss Matthews.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
So under HUD's current disposition rules, it did not qualify for donation for public good. And so we had to get the land appraised and have them purchased for a nominal fee based on the appraisal. And so this is something we could probably talk with HUD too about really taking a look at including public libraries in that area of the regulation for donation of public goods. That way you can get it for $1.
That's a very important point. That's kind of where we are looking at right now. We got to talk to HUD, and you know, that's a whole different story there.
And I think too, at the end of the day, I think that there are paths to get there. Some paths are a little bit more challenging, but again, when it's not just CMHA wanting to do this, it's CMHA with the library, with the city of Cleveland,
Yeah, but Ms. Matthews' point is a really important point is because some of the rules that are in place are just made in which there's no way to even get beyond something like that. Whereas maybe there is a space for ULC to start having conversations with that around, this can make partnerships work better. In our case, he's got a campus, he has a building there. We want to be able to do something with that building, but the only way we can get around that is we have to purchase that building. He can't just give it to us as he creates his new campus, right? And therefore, right, it stops us from maybe being able to put something brand new on it because you add another $5 or $6 million to that price tag.
I had a follow-up question for Ms. Matthews. Do you still have the mic? From the chat, with this carved space, did it reserve services to the housing residents only or to the community, to the whole community?
Oh, it was for the entire community. Yeah, so the entire community benefited from the services, and it was the carved space was directly located in the center of one of our largest family developments, but the entire community had access to the library.
Thank you. And virtual folks, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and I can read them out. If we have any in-person questions, comments?
Well, this is a terrific panel. Thank you so much. Sonia Zaderman with CLAFA. One, the idea of that is catching on is library-centered redevelopment or library-focused redevelopment, and we've seen it in a couple places. Chicago has used that as a kind of an anchor for some of their redevelopment strategies. So to really understand what housing authorities and partners on the library systems are facing to accomplish these kinds of strategies would be hugely important to us. Because we talk to HUD every week. And so if we can be specific about some of these obstacles, the one that you mentioned is a great example of that. That would be enormously helpful. Another goal we have is to get all of our assisted households connected. And the literacy component of it is huge. And I think that is another partnership area for us on the national policy level. We were really thrilled to have Commissioner Starks here yesterday from the FCC. I think he personally is very committed to doing this, and I'd like to, extend an offer to the ULC to talk more about how we pull the uptake of the Affordable Connectivity Program. We're in connection with libraries. And I think the literacy device distribution aspect of it is critical. So I see two important areas of collaboration about bringing library space into public housing campuses and getting rid of those obstacles, but also the everyone on, and for us, assisted households on, and the uptake on the connectivity program. So you'll be hearing from us on that. And thank you for a terrific panel. I see the mic.
And thank you, Sonia. And I want to maybe add to that, that this is also an issue of equity and inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it came through very, very clearly during the pandemic that, folks couldn't really have the ability to connect. A lot of my kids that are in our properties, where they go to connect was to his libraries. When those libraries weren't available as a resource, and you start talking about, okay, we're going to do digital learning, that made it so much harder. Even, when some of our buildings being older, it's still tough to be able to get that level of connectivity. So I think, also rolling a lot of this in and looking through it with the lens of equity and inclusion, I think also, provides a good basis for partnership and for people to give it a lot more consideration.
What I thought was very interesting when the commissioner's numbers was while he actually looked at the numbers of folks who are in housing authorities and found what was it, like 10% had signed on. It was a number that was so low, and he recognized that something has to be done about it. But there are just entities that the federal government hasn't focused providing any funding to. And libraries are one of them that there hasn't been funding for, situated toward us for this. This is just what we do, right? And we're just continuing to do what we do. But with more resources, I think libraries could be more successful. And I think, part of this conversation is housing authorities and libraries, we should be partnering, and we should be asking for the funding to be able to make these successful.
Any more questions or sharing about partnerships?
Well, I'd be happy to hear about whose library directors that you guys have, because I know your library director, and we all know her, and that's why she is who she is, because she is like a tremendous library director, right? And so we're going to take a selfie and send it to her in 5 minutes.
Well, I want to thank you two for such a great conversation. Thank you to our audience as well for your questions and sharing. We'll be around for a few. If you have any additional questions, I also have my colleague, Colleen Morsley, who's here. She's over community engagement for ULC. If you have any additional questions about directors in your respective areas, as well as some of the connections that were made on digital equity and some of the policy side of things. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. We ended a little bit early. We are not going to pick back up until 11:15. In the plenary for in-person folks here, we'll be meeting in here. Virtual folks, you can refer to your agenda and make your way back to the plenary room by 11:15. 11:15 Eastern, 8:15 Pacific for you virtual folks. Sorry.